Good evening and welcome to the October 26, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commissioners meeting, please. Shanika, roll call.
Messina.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Ingalls.
Here.
Lutrip.
Here.
Mandel.
Here.
Rumpler. Ward.
Thank you. If you can join me with the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me out there? We're good? All right, thanks. Looking for approval of minutes for September 14th.
I so move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, there'll be public comments, and that'll be anything besides the one agenda we have. Doesn't look like any public comment. Hillary?
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Just a
Good
few
evening.
comments for you. So we will not be having a November meeting.
Oh.
We didn't have any items that were ready to go forward in November, and then a couple of items that were withdrawn. So we will have a December meeting, and looking at a planned unit development subdivision request for that meeting. The Historic Preservation Commission is going to be making a recommendation to City Council on the Historic Preservation Plan. And so I'll send you guys a copy of that draft document that will be going forward to City Council for consideration. The consultant with Northwest Vernacular gave us some recommendations for items to include in our comprehensive plan update as well. And so I'll share that information with you, but some great overlap in those two documents, and the consultants have been really fantastic at kind of looking at all aspects of planning and how that relates to historic preservation and design and infill and growth and all of that. So just want to give you an update on that. The Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership continues to meet. We had a meeting yesterday. It was the 7th meeting with the full group, including the advisory group members. And we are currently looking at possibilities for different housing management structures. And so looking at utilizing, just kind of expanding upon organizations that are already here that build housing, affordable housing, kind of mainly looking at that. Looking at the possibility of an alliance partnership, which would be working with local developers that build all types of housing, including affordable housing, and also having an alliance that could possibly make recommendations to city councils and county commissioners on zoning codes and some of the housing tools we're looking at. And then also looking at housing authorities. There are a variety of housing authority models throughout the state, and there are state statutes that basically say how an authority can be formed, and it doesn't have to be just HUD housing, Section 8 housing. It can be a variety of housing types, and it can be a really flexible tool that also has the bonding authority for financing. So we're looking at those. We'll be asking our advisory group members to weigh in on that survey, and so keep you updated on that. And as part of that, too, we have compiled a list of possible housing solutions in a draft housing toolkit. And so I shared those documents with you just to kind of keep you apprised of that. All the resources for this partnership are being hosted currently on KMPO's website. So there's information on there. And if anyone has more questions, they can feel free to reach out to me. I'll also give a quick update on the Envision while I'm talking. So
Okay.
we are still working through the action items. So that's kind of part of that policy framework, and that was where a lot of the community input came. So we have a very lengthy list. We've been working closely with CDA 2030 to eliminate any that are already action items that are underway or completed, to eliminate any duplications. And then we have separated them, I think I mentioned last time, into kind of a convening authority. So ones that are just city only, ones that CDA 2030 might just take on their own with other lead partners and supporting partners, and ones where we will partner as joint partners. So Sean and I will be meeting with department heads at the city this Thursday and reviewing the city action items. And so we're making some great headway, and thank you to CDA 2030 for all their efforts on that. We're getting close to being able to bring forward a document and have the joint workshops and hopefully get it to the finish line. So
Good.
Thanks for your patience and all of your participation.
Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate it. Commission comments? Yes, John.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Hillary and the Planning Department for inviting the Planning Commission to participate in the American Planning Association's 2021 conference, Idaho conference, entitled Idaho Discovered, Planning for Opportunity, Bracing for Impact. The conference was virtual, and there were many hot topics that are certainly very much in vogue. Things like short-term rentals, growth and changing demographics, and affordable housing initiatives and developments. So a couple takeaways from that. One, kudos to you, Hillary. It was good to see you in your president of American Planning Association Idaho's, your leadership role as you moderated many of those good topics there. So it was great to see you in action doing that. And the other takeaway, I guess, is it was both encouraging but also kind of discouraging in a way that all cities in Idaho seem to be wrestling with these same kind of issues of growth and short-term rentals and affordable housing and whatnot. So encouraging, discouraging, but it's great to see the collaboration. And I guess from watching in a little bit, I could see the value of why there is a chapter and why you all network and whatnot, because we're not alone up here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. If we're collaborating with all the other cities and learning what they're doing elsewhere, that we could they could learn from us, we could learn from them. So thank you and kudos.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
I'd like to second John's motion. You did a very good job. I believe that continuing education is very, very important for all, including us commissioners. My only concern is I hear a little bit like that, and all of a sudden I become an expert, and that's dangerous. But I noticed that the comment about short-term rental, Sandpoint has something that we don't have because the legislature in some fashion determined they are a resort city or a resort center, which is fine. But we're constrained because of the legislature. I'm not elected. I don't want to be elected, but it doesn't preclude me from making comments. I would encourage our city to become as active as we possibly can in the legislature. It will not be easy, but if we have certain positions we want to take, we need to pursue it. It's better to fail trying than not try at all. And short-term rentals, I think there was a tax incident that happened a while back that we didn't particularly agree with. It's like I say, it's very easy for me to make comments like that because I have nothing at risk. I'm not going to run. But it's sometimes discouraging to hear that we want to do something but are precluded by somebody else. And you did a great job, and I would good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Okay. We're going to move on to our public hearing this evening. There is a sign-up sheet, so the people that are here, if they want to speak on this item, they can hopefully sign on the sheet, and I'll call your name later. The applicant is Lakeshore Estates, LLC. Thanks, Sean. Easton terminus of Spruce Avenue adjacent to I-90, a proposed 92-lot preliminary plat, the Foundry, S-4-21. Sean, you're going to give us a quick overview?
Absolutely. Well,
All
to
right.
get this up and running, I wanted to say happy early Halloween to everybody. I noticed Commissioner Lutrip's outfit is orange and black. Thank you. That's great. I noticed that. All right, so let's dive right in. So tonight before you is a subdivision request, S-421, 92-lot preliminary plat subdivision request for the Foundry. You'll see on your screen, the owner is Lakeshore Estates LLC. The applicant is Lake City Engineering. Drew is here tonight and can answer some of your questions that I would not be able to answer, and he will be up in a moment to talk about it. So the location, it is west of I-90, south of the neighborhoods along East Woolsey and East Spruce Avenue, where that turns into a cul-de-sac, east of North 9th Street and along Hazel Avenue. So 92 lot preliminary plat. Here is an area map. You can see I-90 right here, 9th Street north and south, it goes over the freeway here, and then Woolsey's up here, Spruce is down to the south. Here it is up close. So, the applicant was kind enough to provide me a little bit of history on the site. That can be found on page 2. There's a long history going back to 1915, where it looked like Jack's Forrest grandmother owned that property. It was used, building was constructed in 1945 and where it included a wrecking yard. It looked like the large-scale storage of vehicles then ended in 1975. There is a longer history that is in the staff report if you'd like to see that. There are 4 findings that are required for subdivision, and they are A through D. So we'll start with A, is that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested to by the city engineer. So Chris Bosley, he is here as well. He can answer questions if there are any engineering questions. He has attested that those general preliminary plat elements are on the plat. Here is a picture. It's very difficult to try and fit this size of a subdivision on the screen. It looks much bigger and better up there. There is 92 lots. Here is Hazel along here, 9th Street north and south, I-90, Woolsey Drive, and then Spruce Avenue right here. So finding B7B is that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are or are not adequate. So on pages 5 through 8, you will find the comments from staff, which include streets, storm, water, traffic, sewer, and fire. Suffice it to say that there was no staff comments that said that that any of these were missing or it hindered the development of the site. So here is the improvements and the phasing. So you can see here along this dotted line right here and then out to the freeway, this is phase A, which would happen first. To the north of that would be phase B, and then finally phase C is right here and would stretch out to 9th Street. This is a typical interior and Hazel Avenue street sections showing what the width of the streets are, street side swales, sidewalks, and then the finished grade and property lines. So this isn't necessarily part of the request tonight, but I wanted to be clear what the request entails as we move forward. There would be future right-of-way dedications for Hazel that right now it does not exist to the width of what you just saw here for the street sections to meet the minimum standards for streets in the city of Coeur d'Alene, so they would be dedicating a portion of that to the city. This aligns with number 1 over here. You can see it's an unimproved dirt road. It's kind of messy. I went out there and took pictures of it. And then number 2 does not exist yet. The city has a 30-foot wide piece of right-of-way. Don't know if it ever intended to be an alley or not, but they would dedicate an additional 30 feet and then improve and build Hazel right along here, and that aligns with picture number 2. The third piece is that they would be requesting a vacate to city council. That Spruce Avenue comes down into a cul-de-sac. You can see this in this picture right here. They would be requesting a vacate of the edges of that and then building Spruce Avenue into a future 12th Street that runs north and south. And here's what it currently looks like. So the third finding is B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision standards from chapter 1615 and all of the subdivision improvement standards in chapter 1640. So per engineering review and for the purposes of the preliminary plat, The subdivision design standards and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. I did include the titles for each one of those in your staff report if you wanted to review that. It is on page 9 and 10. That is, here is the general language, and then the following numbers, the title heads for those. And last but not least is finding B7D, that the proposed lots of the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. So they are requesting 92 lots. It is currently zoned R12. The total site measures 20.03 acres. Approximately 3.88 acres will be dedicated as public city streets or right-of-way, leaving 16.15 acres for development into 92 lots as requested. All proposed lots must have a minimum of 50 feet of frontage. It's the zoning of the site right here. Here's that requirement for frontage and minimum lot size. So for a single-family house, you need 5,500 square feet. A duplex requires 7,000 square feet for a lot. 78 of the lots that are proposed are large enough for a duplex. The remainder would be single-family. These lots may or may not be built as duplexes, and the owners could instead build a single-family home with or without an ADU. 14 lots are proposed as single-family. The smallest of the proposed lots is 5,536 square feet. The largest, 11,890 square feet. The average lot size is 7,648 square feet. So that yields a density of approximately 10.5 units per acre, or 170 total dwelling units, not including ADUs. And so the cul-de-sac and knuckle lots, their frontages are reduced a little bit. The code does allow for that. But when you get back to the 20-foot setback requirement for the front yard, it has to be 40 foot in width. Now, there are 7 proposed conditions. I won't read these into the record because it can be long, but a traffic impact study would be required. Build the full hazel width for the dirt area that I had showed you, as well as the area that hasn't been built out at all. That was engineering's requirements, planning, that what are shown as easements, they look like alleys, but they are easements, that the setbacks for the sides would be 5 and 10 to meet the R12 standard, and that lot 31 is a double frontage, but it would require a 10-foot easement along 9th Street, which would prohibit vehicle access from 2 sides. Water general requirements, fire hydrants, and services must be extended at the responsibility and the developer's expense. And then fire, that's pretty boilerplate language. 150 feet requires a temporary fire department turnaround. Let me get back there. I can show you the only area that we saw that would trigger that is through phase A here. It looks like if this gets out to a distance where it might need a fire department turnaround, a temporary one would be provided. Don't know if it meets that distance though. All right. So, Planning Commission must consider, let me get back to the right, must consider this request and make separate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. The finding worksheets are attached for you. I'm going to anticipate a question that I'm guessing Peter would ask me. He's pretty good at doing that sort of thing, is when was the last one that was similar to this size? And so I looked it up for you. There were some smaller ones. Alpine Point was 28 lots. That was an R3 development. That was in 2017. Prairie Trails was 32 lots. That was R8 in 2016. And it's not clear back until 2014 that we got a request over 100 acres for a straight subdivision, not including a PUD. So this is a straight subdivision for Lake Forest West.
Well, thank you.
With that, I'll conclude my staff report and stand for questions.
Hey, John.
Good job.
Thanks, Sean. Good report. Couple questions. If you don't have the answer, that's great, but maybe give Mr. Dittman a chance to kind of be pondering a little bit. I wonder if you could go to a sketch that kind of looks like this. If you
Oh,
can see
sure.
that from here. So you can see if you take your arrow straight up and over,
Right or
we
left?
have over to the right, you see it says private alley. So this is a subdivision that I guess is going to have, there's an alley there, and there's another one that goes north-south.
Correct.
As well. So I'm curious, there's the other one, you see it
One here, yes.
Yeah.
There's one here,
right there.
and there's one through here.
So, this being a straight-up subdivision, it's not a PUD, there's no provision for an HOA. How does that private alley get managed and maintained and things like that?
So it is an easement, so there is access there. I'll have to leave that to Drew to explain how over long-term that would be maintained. It was not dedicated to the city, so like my staff report says, the side yard setbacks will still be 5 and 10 rather than 5 and 5 because they were not dedicated.
Are there utilities in there?
Let's get back
Is
to
that the intent?
Hopefully it's.
And if
right,
so,
wrong way.
there's, it's got to be of some serviceability if there's utility access requirements and such. Where I'm coming from is, we have alleys all over the city, in the old parts of town. We don't build developments anymore with alleys as a general rule, and when we do, they tend to be in PUDs where there's an HOA that, handles future maintenance requirements. But if those are going to be kind of like the other alleys of, in the old part of town, if you will, established part of town, who goes in there and grades those every now and then and that kind of thing,
Right. My understanding is they are improved. I'll let Drew tell you exactly what that standard is, but I believe all the utilities are actually in the streets themselves. There is a main line that comes across Interstate 90, a pretty main trunk line for wastewater that runs up and down 12th Street there, and then it'll branch out from there, and then water also follows the street as well.
Sean,
Yes.
what's defined an alley? I mean, why do we even have to have this there?
They don't have to have it. That was
Why do
their
we even
choice.
have it? I mean, if I want to put an alley through my property, couldn't I?
Yes, you can, but it's an easement. So I made that distinction up front because it's not dedicated to the city like a right-of-way is, like where a street is and all of our alleys downtown. That's actually city property, and it's shared access. Like, I can go drive through any one of the alleys downtown, but here, it's an easement for the people that live there, so it's a little bit of a different animal. That's the reason why I said, well, you're gonna have 5 foot on one side and 10 foot from the other, because it may or may not get used, and it's not dedicated to the city, so I wanted to be sure that the setbacks met the minimum R12 standards.
Thank you.
So, Sean, thanks. The other question I had was, if you could maybe pull up that condition on the traffic study a little bit, before we take a bunch of testimony and get into this. I'd kind of really try to understand in simple terms. To me, it says we're going to go off and do a traffic study, and if the traffic study says, oh, we need to have a 4-way stop at 9th and Harrison or whatever, or at Best and 9th or whatever, then according to that, as I read it, we would look at the development impact fee report, and if there was an improvement at those spots identified, everything's fine. But if the traffic study says, gee, we need a signal because of this project, we would need a signal, the warrants would be achieved for a signal at 9th and Best. We go to the development impact fee report, and there's no mention of a signal at 9th and Best. The developer would be on the hook to fully fund a signal or some kind of a resulting mitigation.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. We did have this discussion, and so the mitigation measures have been identified in the report. The applicant would be responsible for their proportionate share of the
Proportionate
cost.
share,
So,
okay.
right, so only what their direct impact to that would be. Chris is here, he can answer this question much better than me if I didn't answer it well.
And I think we wrestled with that a lot at Wilbur and Ramsey with Coeur d'Alene Place, and we kind of sort of were maybe trying to stick Coeur d'Alene Place with the whole deal when it was a proportionate share, and we worked through that. So,
Right.
Good, I appreciate that. Thanks. Oh, one more question.
Sure.
Trivia question. You mentioned the history. So, who was Jack Forrest's father? What was his name?
I will have to look at that.
All right, I'll let you know later.
Okay.
I do have the answer.
Deal. All right.
Well, while you're on it, I want to say I have, and this will not affect my opinion on this, I do have some investment in this property. I got a 36 four-door Chevy and a 51 Ford Coupe that ended up there.
It was a wrecking yard.
Well, they weren't, I didn't term them wrecks. I couldn't drive them, but you couldn't. Yes.
Is there any other questions?
Oh, thanks, Sean.
All right.
Actually, I'd like to have Chris come up, if you don't mind. Chris? Going on what John said about proportionate amount of whatever the cost might be, whatever that might be, given that this is a 90-plus unit subdivision or a plat, how does that work if the impact comes back and they say, yeah, we need a light someplace? Or how do you say how much of a portion is this developer going to be kind of responsible for, given the fact that most of the traffic is going to be generated from this particular plat?
Well, we would have to look at the traffic that's out there already, and then the increase in traffic that this subdivision would add to that, say, 9th Street or whatever. If there was already 2,000 cars a day on there, and they're adding another 2,000 cars a day, it would be a 50-50 split on that.
Okay, so there's a formula based
Yeah,
on
yeah.
what we did. Okay, that's the only question I had for you,
Great,
unless
thank you.
anybody else has a question for Chris.
I think that this document for us opens a lot of opportunities. I think it's an excellent report, covers lots of things. I have several questions on traffic that we'll hit at another time, what all this means. But I think you hit a thing. You have a formula, you have a basis for determining these things. If the flow is so much, then a yield sign might be warranted. If it's so much, you may have to have a stoplight. So there's a standard that is used, I would imagine, statewide, maybe countrywide for you
Yeah, federally.
civil engineers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, appreciate it. Okay, Drew, if you want to come on up. I'll just swear you in, Drew.
Yeah, let me grab my.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Go right ahead, thank you.
Chairman Messina, fellow commissioners, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the great city of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Here tonight representing Lakeshore Estates LLC in their pursuit of a preliminary plat called The Foundry. Obviously, that has to do with being the forest property. Catchy, clever names. I don't do those, but somebody came up with that catchy, clever name. You can see here the property highlighted there in white and blue. It is bound on the west, so this is 9th Street here, Interstate 90, and I owe somebody $1 because I've mislabeled these streets here, 12th Street and 13th Street. And then as Sean had indicated, you've got Hazel Street on the south, so this is the piece here. It consists of actually 3 different parcels of property, about 20 acres total. It's currently annexed in the city. It is currently zoned R12. We would therefore consider this to be an infill project. I know I've looked at this piece of property a dozen times over the past 10 or 15 years from different developers looking to develop it. And nobody was able to pull the trigger to make it work until now. So it's been a while, and I know this, like I said, it's an infill piece of property. Let me go through a couple more things here. So this is the same drawing that Sean had up there. This is our preliminary plat, 92 lots, 20 acres. And I say lots because, as Sean had indicated, there are several of the lots that do meet the requirements for possible duplex, which is 3,500 square feet per unit or 7,000 square feet. I don't know if that's our intention or not, but those lots could be developed as duplex lots. We do have an average lot size of 9,500 square feet. Sean went through these and they're in their staff reports, but I'm going to go through them real quick. Again, these are the 4 findings that are required for subdivision. The first one is that, city engineer, Mr. Bosley back here, has attested that it does meet all the preliminary plat requirements. We've checked that box. I'm going to skip B for a minute. C is that it does comply with the subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvements. Planning and engineering have both reviewed it and signed off, and that is indicated in the staff report. And then the last one is the lots in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district, and they do, as Sean had indicated. 3,500 square feet per unit or 5,500 square feet for a single family is the minimum allowable lot size in the R12. We do meet that criteria. It is a straightforward subdivision. We're not asking for any variances or such. Let's talk about B, and that's kind of the big one. The provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-ways, easements, lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, and all utilities are adequate. That's kind of the catch-all one. In other words, does the subdivision meet your master plans? Is it being developed in guidance with what is out there, and does it fit? So a couple of things. Let me go back here real quick. So stormwater is on there. Stormwater is, it's addressed in the staff report. That's something we'll address during the design of the project. Staff will have an opportunity, obviously, to look at our drawings and make sure we meet all the stormwater criteria. Streets, all the streets are proposed to be city public streets. And again, will be reviewed and signed off by Mr. Bosley. And fire has also commented, but they'll also get a chance to look at the construction drawings during design. So that leaves, a couple of big ones. Traffic, and traffic has been discussed. The good thing about this piece is it actually is somewhat of a continuation of the existing neighborhood. There's 5 different access points into this property, as you can see. So again, this is 9th here. You've got an access off of what is now the dead-end spruce. We're going to remove the cul-de-sac and bring spruce all the way through. You've got 3 different accesses to the south. You've got hazel here that'll come in from the west. So there is multiple points of ingress and egress, which is good for traffic flow. We are aware that staff has requested a traffic impact study. We agree that we will do that. We don't anticipate any additional mitigation being required, but we're going to go ahead and do that study. The condition in the staff report is that it's done prior to final plat. I can assure you we're going to do it prior to construction because we want to know what we're getting into before we start building it and realize that there's problems. So we've actually already hired a consultant to start working on that a traffic study. We want to know what we're dealing with. Sewer and water and utilities. So the cool thing about this piece of property is there is actually a large diameter trunk main that currently runs through the middle of the property for sewer. It's a 12-inch diameter main. It's been there for many, many, many years. There's several manholes on there. I actually met with Larry from the wastewater department the other day. These are old. Some of them are brick and mortar manholes, and he's asked that we replace them. We're going to go ahead and do that. It's the right thing to do. We don't want any sewer leaks, but there is sewer that runs right through the middle of the property, so that's not an issue. There is capacity in it. There's also a large diameter 16-inch water line that runs along Hazel here in the south, and a 12-inch water line that runs up 9th. So we've got utilities already to the site, some cases through the site. So that's a good thing. Another issue that wasn't brought up in the staff report, but probably needs to be discussed is schools, and I think you have a letter in your packet that came in today from the school district. I had a great conversation with Jeff Voller this morning about it, and, you know, growth does have impacts to the school district. I've been doing this long enough, you guys have been up there long enough, you know that, I know that. But there's no such thing as a school impact fee in the state of Idaho. We know that. So I had a good conversation with Mr. Voller this morning about mitigation, and we are and have offered to them a mitigation fee in lieu of, because they can't require an impact fee. So we're going to go ahead and give them $500 a lot due at time of final plat for this as a voluntary mitigation fee. So I'm trying to help the schools out. It's the right thing to do, and we were proactive and approached the school district, and they were very much appreciative of that. There are 7 conditions in the staff report. We've read all of them. We agree to all of them. We don't take exception to any of them. Commissioner Ingalls had asked about the alleyway. We're proposing a private alleyway. That's why it's not being dedicated to the city. It will be privately maintained by the HOA. It will be paved and improved. It has to do with product type and curb appeal. And having a alley allows us to do some different rear-loaded product type and give us a different variety of housing that can go in there. It's something that the developer we had talked through and been through many renditions on it, and that's their idea, and they have some product that's gonna work on these lots, and that'll work in the R12 zone. And we wanted to propose it as a private alley, because we didn't want to have to go through the whole PUD process with public alleys and whatnot, and therefore we will maintain it. There will not be any utilities in it. It'll be ingress, egress only. All of the utilities will be out in front in the city public street as would normally be there. It's just going to be for access. It allows us to do some rear-loaded product and some cool stuff, so. Commissioner Ingalls also brought up the traffic study, but I've addressed that. We're going to go ahead and do it. It will be completed prior to construction. I think that was all the questions. Do you have any more questions for me?
Just to follow up, a couple of questions. So you envision an HOA, even though it's not a requirement, as if it were a PUD, it would be a requirement
Correct.
that there be an HOA. There's
We're-
nothing that says you can't voluntarily, even though it's not a requirement. It sounds like the plan is to create one.
I
because-
think we're going to have to in order to get it maintained efficiently and effectively,
Okay,
correct?
I appreciate that. And help me understand, if you would, a little bit. I've got, an email that came to us, and they said they're against the proposed zoning change. Well, it's not a zoning change. I
Correct.
know that, you know that.
Correct.
But let's talk about, density for a second. You're an engineer, you do math pretty well. So 20.03 at R12, 20 times 20.03 times 12, that's 240 units.
Correct.
So, if you figured out a different way to lay out streets, or skinnied them down, made them private, came in as a PUD, did some creative things, and if your goal was to absolutely get as many sellable lots on that piece of property, you've done a lot of development. It strikes me, I guess, that, for the clarity, again, we're not talking about a zoning change here. 92 units at 20 acres is fairly soft. I mean, in this climate, I'm a little surprised there's not a push for more density.
Sure.
Because it could be 240
Could be 240.
if you can lay it out and whatnot. And granted,
This is a very interesting and unique piece of property. As I said, there is that sewer main that runs through the middle of it. It goes east-west and north-south. There's a couple of easements that run through it. Vista's got some power lines that run through it. All of that plays into the ability to get more density. Now, this slide here shows 92 lots, 4.6 lots to the acre. But as Sean had discussed in the staff report, maximum number of units, as we've proposed it, is 170. So there's 78 lots that could be duplex lots that meet that 7,000 square foot threshold. So you do that math, and there's 170, but 170 divided by 20 is still 8.5 units to the acre. So we're still well below that 12 unit threshold, correct?
so, your opinion, I guess the way you've laid the traffic out, you know, you know, comp plan talks about, you know, the benefits of connectivity
Correct.
and whatnot. You're mirroring and almost copying and extending what's there, and mirroring what's there. So that in a way, and with the wide streets, the city standard streets, you know, that approach, I guess, costs you some density, doesn't it?
It does cost us some business. You're right, there are extra, I don't want to say unnecessary streets, but there are extra connections and extra streets in there. Again, we know that traffic is an issue. We want to provide as many ingress, egress outlets as possible. And we wanted it to fit with the existing context of the neighborhood too. So all of that played into it. And you're right, we're not here asking for 240 units.
Thank you.
Any other question? Oh,
Did you get a copy of the letter that we get, concerns they have on the project?
I got a few of them, yes.
Okay, well, this one, I think you answered all these, but I'll give you another chance.
Sure.
This person says they're going to vote against it for the following reasons: noise pollution, increased vehicle traffic, no sidewalks, less kids and people walking dogs in the street, increased delivery trucks, etc. How bad driving is with snow in the street, and pulling off to the side when another car comes. I think could you address those? I think you have, but maybe just for the person that wrote the letter to us, so they
Yeah.
know that you.
Traffic, we've addressed traffic. We're going to do the traffic study. If there's additional mitigation required, obviously, we're on the hook to do it. It's the condition of approval. We know that. We are proposing city streets. They will have sidewalks on them. They're wide streets. They meet your standards, so that's good. Delivery trucks, yes, there's going to be delivery trucks. It's going to be construction. It's
It's a standard street.
standard
It's
street.
a normal
Correct.
street, city
Correct.
street.
And noise, I mean, it's a residential neighborhood, so I'm not sure how to address the noise comment. You're going to get standard residential noises.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think so. We'll have you back if something comes up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. I have Lee Nash. Does wish to talk?
Well,
Lee, I just need to swear you in.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, no problem. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go right ahead, Lee.
I'm bringing up something that whether it'll brought up later or whatever, excuse me, I've got new false teeth in here, and it's kind of hard to get used to them. I'm talking in the vein of, I'm sure you've all heard it, but most of Coeur d'Alene is getting so it's not affordable to live in because of the taxes, and I'm just speaking generally affordable housing because of the taxes. And I was hoping that somehow somebody would think of bringing somebody from the Treasurer Department or the Assessor's Department in here to approach this, because I live right across the street from this proposed development. And it's a Habitat house, and our value of our house has doubled in the last year or two. And I don't know how the assessor or the Treasury Department addresses this for a Habitat house. There's 4 Habitat houses on a little cul-de-sac there on Hazel, at the end of Hazel, and where it's going to be extended. But I would hope that somehow this tax situation would be addressed, because like I said, a lot of Coeur d'Alene's getting, so it's not affordable to live in, especially if you're older or retired. And I would like that somehow addressed. I don't know how the planning department or city would approach this or does approach this. I mean, I realize it's a county department, or these are county departments, but that would be my number one thing. And then the other thing is the infrastructure that's surrounding that is bound. It's like taking a small city and placing it right in the middle of a fairly dense city already. Most of the houses there are older around there, and they're older people as well. I mean, they've been there for quite a while. But I would like that addressed somehow, or find a way to approach the treasurer and the assessor's department. I don't know that that's normal for the city to do, but it seems like if there's affordable housing you're talking about, that's not going to be the case with a lot of the houses all the way down to Harrison or south of Harrison, all the way over almost to Government Way and 15th, because that whole area is impacted as well as, like I said, financially and tax-wise. And I think that ought to be put in the context of this approval. And, you know, I mean, I'm all for people making a profit. Now, this property's just been sold in the last year or two. It was somebody else that was going to develop it a different way. And, you know, they're here all to make money. And I've been around businesses, and I've had a few of mine myself when I was younger. But I would think all that should be in the context of this approval or thought. And like I said, I would like some kind of answer to see about, especially when it's a habitat house that I live in. And the other poor people in that little cul-de-sac on Lucy, which is the end of Harrison, you know, they're concerned, as well as all the people on that street and all those streets just south of there. I think that's the only thing I can say. But again, it's about affordable housing and about tax concerns and the infrastructure to the whole immediate area. Like I said, all the way up to Government Way, it's going to impact it, and 15th and south of Harrison. I'm repeating myself, but anyway, that's it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. Steve Peck?
Top of the mountain, highest about top of the mountain.
You got to come up to the... Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Well, certainly.
Go right ahead, Steve.
When you talk about forest, my house was moved there by Jack Forrest back in '38. And I've lived in the same house on 9th Street since November of '73, so I've seen some changes in our hood. All right. I realize they're going to build stuff here, and I would hope they can build more single-family than duplexes. But one of the things on your planning on your traffic, I think could help, is on 13th, 12th, and 10th, as they go south toward Harrison, if they could maybe put stop signs so that's a straight shot all the way to Harrison, they might have a tendency to take some of the traffic off 9th. Just a thought, it's a question, because I know they do it like on 7th, they do it on 9th, all the cross streets. 5th Street's that way, but it was something to look at. And I would hope the developer would put more single family, because it used to be all single family there for many years until they started putting all the duplexes in on 9th and a few of those other streets. And when you talk about the bobbing in and out on 9th, it gets that way as the traffic, as the snow plows up, the street gets narrower, and they just keep parking further out, and you're going down there, it's stop, wait for a car, pull out, stop. And that's just the way it is, it's been that way since the traffic's gotten so much worse. And I don't know what they can do about it unless you make no parking on 9th Street, but I don't know if that would happen. And as you talked about 9th and Harrison, 9th and Best. As it sits just today, I can sometimes sit there for 10 minutes trying to get out onto Best or onto Harrison. And I'm saying, one of these days, they're gonna have to put a light here. Anyway, it's bad, trying to, certain times of the day. Most times at night or early in the morning, it's not bad, but during the middle of the day, I swear the lights on Best are timed that when all the traffic comes from 4th, on Best, okay, you can't go. All right, now I can go, there's no traffic coming. Then all the light changes over on 15th, and they're all coming the other way, so you can't go. And then it's, oh, now it's a clear, you know how that goes. It's a timing issue, and ain't much you can do about it. But it gets really bad, trying to get out on Harrison and get out on 9th, on Best. But if you could look at the stop signs, and that way, when they have that straight exit coming out here on 13.
Sir,
No, you gotta, we can't hear you if you're,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay.
you
When
can
they
use
come
that.
down on 13th, it could be just a straight shot to Harrison, or 12th, or 10th. 'Cause they're gonna build something. The good thing is, when they do build, they'll get rid of that skunk that lives over there, because every once in a while, the whole neighborhoods. Right, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Peter, go ahead.
Mr. Peck, sir,
Yes, sir.
you do have an advantage of attending tonight. You can meet the two people that are going to be involved in this, the city engineer, Chris Bosley, and Drew, the guy that's doing the project.
Okay.
So if you have a continuing interest in this, maybe just get their cards, and as things progress, you can discuss it with them, because I assume that with their experience in developing these and experience with traffic, that they've thought of some of these things, but they may have not gotten everything. And you'll see the result of their work as things go down.
Right.
So you have a couple contacts here, then, and you.
Would they also be a contact who owns the property or talk about it? Because I
Pardon me?
used to deal with Grant Forest quite a bit on the lots. It's not, they bought it, but it's not in the current ABC. It's gotta be D. It's right there between 10th and 9th. He used to take care of it and mow the weeds when it got real high every year. And since they sold it, it's just, I don't know who's the contact to say, hey, cut your weeds before a fire starts.
All I know for this project, you have the two
You guys there?
two guys you need, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
You can contact code enforcement about weeds.
Done that, but hasn't had great success on that. But thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I like kind of go to the person. Thank you.
I have no one else on our list. Drew, do you want to?
Mr. Chairman, I have some online.
Oh,
Yeah, we have some people on Zoom this evening,
Oh, you
too.
do? I didn't
so-
know that.
Yep.
Okay. So who do we
Okay.
have?
I know, right? We have 4 people on Zoom that are interested in
Oh,
testifying.
great.
So first we have Kristen Wood. And I believe Kristen and Douglas are both guests on Zoom. If you can give them the ability to speak, please.
So who's the first one up? Kristen Wood?
What's that?
Who's the person on Zoom right now?
Well, I'm trying to get Kristen and Douglas Wood to have access to speak, so. Brandon or Jeff or John, are you guys able to do that? We could also move on to the next person and work through that one if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, so we also have Anita Anderson.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Let me just swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God?
Yes, that is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay, I live on the corner of Northern Court and 10th Street, right at the corner of Phase C, I believe, right before Hazel. Right on the, I guess, south side of this big property lot. And I'm just concerned about the big fence that runs around this property and a few things. I talked to the planner a few weeks ago about it, and he didn't have an answer. But I wonder what are they going to tear this fence down? Because this huge fence backs a lot of properties.
along Northern Court and down around the property.
Okay, is that your only question?
Well, that's the only question I have, other than when they build the Phase C, which way they're going to be facing, the houses are going to be facing, whether they're going to be facing my property or this, a different direction, but that probably won't be determined until they get ready to build.
Okay. Any other question?
Nope, that's my question.
Okay, well, I'm sure the applicant has a chance to come back up after public comment, and he can address your questions at that time. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, guest has been granted the ability to speak, so we'll let them. So I think it's Kristen and Douglas, as I mentioned.
Hello?
Oh, maybe not. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Guess they're saying that's not them.
I'm just
So
gonna let
we
you take
have
over.
Greg Gervais is also signed up to testify. Greg, can you unmute? Are you interested in testifying?
I'm not interested in testifying.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Just let me swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, hello?
Yeah, Chairman, I think he said he's not interested in
Oh,
testifying.
he does
Yep,
not. I
Thank
can't.
you.
A little echoey. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
And guest, are you interested in testifying? I don't know. Did you sign up on this sheet? No, thank you. Okay, I think that's all we have
That's
online.
it?
Thank you.
I think Hillary, if it was Kristen and Dougwood, they sent us an email expressing concern about traffic. So
Okay.
hoping that Chris Bosley's and the applicant's response about the traffic study and mitigation address that. But if it's the same group, I think
Okay,
hopefully we've
perfect.
addressed that for them.
Thank you.
Okay. Drew, you want to come up and address anything you heard?
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, again, for the record, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering. Traffic was brought up several times. Obviously, that's been addressed. We're going to do the traffic study. I'll talk to my consultant and mention the stop signs, and if that's a possibility, we can certainly look at that and see if that's a possibility. Affordable housing was brought up, and I'm sure Hillary could talk our ears off for hours and hours on affordable housing and what does it mean and how do you do it. I don't have a magic answer for affordable housing. One of the ways that you can achieve that is through density. Now, as Commissioner Ingalls so eloquently put, we're not asking for max density. We're kind of middle of the road density. But that whole affordability thing, the cost of the land plays into it, the cost of improvements, the impact fees, the building permit fees, all of that plays into the affordable concept. I can't stand up here and tell you that this is going to be an affordable housing project because I don't know what the true definition of affordable housing is. It's going to be a market-driven project. I can tell you that. It is going to be a little more dense than some of the other subdivisions that you guys have seen. So from that standpoint, it probably will be more affordable than most. I wrote notes here, so excuse me while I go through this. The issue of single-family versus duplex, both of those are allowed uses in the R12 zone. So if it's an allowable use, it could be built. We're not proposing one way or the other, but they are both allowable uses. The fence question was brought up, and so again, here's 9th, and this is Hazel, and Hazel kind of takes a jog and runs down here. I believe the fence that is being asked is there's currently a fence that runs along here. Obviously, that it's a chain link, I think it's like 8 foot tall. That's obviously going to get removed during construction, during development. We've got to build the road through there, so that fence will get removed as part of the construction process. I think that covered all of them, and I don't know the answer to your question, to your trivia question, but you're going to tell us. Wally.
Wally Forest.
Winner, winner, winner. Anything else for me?
I don't believe so.
Thank you very much.
All right. At this time, I'm going to close public testimony on this particular item and bring it to the commission for discussion or motion. Go ahead, Peter.
Sure, two items. First of all, Mr. Nash, the city is concerned about affordable housing. Hillary, the director of the planning department, is very involved in that with the city and so forth. They're doing a lot of work. You may want to talk with her after this meeting or other times, but your concerns are also faced by the city, and they're trying to do something on that. Secondly, this letter from the school district is pretty nice. I mean, it shows some effort between the property owner and the school working together to try and up with a reasonable solution, something that is outside of our control, the best I can understand. You know, but it's a matter of the community involvement, both by the property owner and the school. I think they should both be congratulated on working this out.
Go ahead, John.
Just some comments, I guess. You know, I for Mr. Dittman, I'd say I'm impressed with the layout. I think there's more to like than not like compared to what it could be. It could be, you know, a 240 unit development with little narrow streets, private streets, you know, lots of cul-de-sacs and whatnot, just to try to maximize density. And I think this is sort of respectful in that it nicely expands upon what's already there. You know, it has, as you point out, 5 access points, and it really just looks like a continuation. Had this been built 40 years ago, 50 years ago, you know, the history there, that, you know, it was Wally Forest Wrecking Yard, and it was a junkyard for decades. I crawled around there when I was a kid getting parts off old cars that I needed the parts, and that's what you did. You go to the wrecking yard, get a part. But it's sat vacant for all these years, and you know, I think one approach would be to maximize the density and just go in there with, you know, streets that aren't, you know, a continuance of existing streets and whatnot. So I think it's an orderly development. I think it's well laid out. I think it has good connectivity. It disperses the traffic out 5 different directions. I appreciate that you're going to do the traffic study, and if the study dictates, you know, you'll participate in some pro rata formula to assist with the you know, any traffic mitigations. But I think by dispersing it out there, I think they'll be somewhat nominal. So I think you've done a really good job.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Any other comments before we make a motion? Someone can do findings?
I do think the weight of this is traffic, and I think that sits in Chris's ballpark. I am concerned about it. I do worry about people turning on to Harrison. It's already fairly congested and high traffic, and we're going to be loading that from 3 different entry points. I'm also worried about the northerly and southerly traffic on 9th, and as it hits the upper streets and the lower streets again, but that's in his court, and maybe we have to limit one side parking or something, be clever about how we allow that traffic to flow. So it's going to be a real impact when you build this out to its full build out. 170 units, multiple cars, multiple families, school buses, all the 9 yards, and I think that sits squarely in traffic. So that is my bump in the road, is the traffic. And otherwise, we need this housing. It's not the most desirable land because it's sitting beside a freeway. So duplexes make sense. There's a high turnover, it's affordable, we can condense it against the freeway. So it isn't going to be luxury homes, let's admit it. So, you know, who can say that you can build, you know, much bigger houses? Yes, but who's going to want to live there? This is not a high desirable area, but it's good use for that area. So I'm being honest. So, I wouldn't want the carbon monoxide sitting in my backyard, but, it's reality. So, so in that point, do you have anything to say? Are we good?
No, I think you and Commissioner Ingalls covered it. I think the traffic study will sort of speak for itself and what the mitigation measures will need to be and the developer responsibility for that. I think the school district, I'm glad they've weighed in. I'm glad they've been working with the developer to try and at least address some of the impact that this will have. I think a lot of the burden on the schools is not necessarily in that area, but I think as our community grows, the school issue just becomes increasingly important. So I don't have anything to add. I think we'll look forward to the traffic study for final approval.
I agree. I don't have anything else to add. I agree with what my fellow commissioners have said, and hopefully we can get someone to do some findings and move on.
Go for it.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion, if I could, in the form of crawling through the findings in order here, so bear with me. This being a matter that's come before the Planning Commission tonight, October 26th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of item S421, a request for a 92-lot preliminary plat known as the Foundry. Applicant being Lakeshore Estates LLC. Location is a plus or minus 20.03 acres, zoned R12, located west of I-90, south of neighborhoods associated with the East Woolsey Drive and East Spruce Avenue, east of North 9th Street, and along East Hazel Avenue. Motion that we'd adopt findings B1 through B6, which are just background statements of fact in our worksheet. The substantive findings being B7, A, that all the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer or his designee. We'd make that based on the statement that Sean described to us, and it's in our staff report, page 4, that all of those conditions have been met. B7B, that finding that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are adequate, and that's based on the staff report presented as well as the statements in the staff report on pages 7 and 8. We adopt finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in chapter 16.40 requirements. That has been met. We would base that on the staff report presented tonight, as well as the printed staff report, page 9 and 10, that all of those conditions have been fully vetted for compliance. And B7D, that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district, and that is based on the presentation as well as Sean's presentation, as well as all of the information in the staff report with respect to minimum lot sizes. Minimum lot of 5,536 meets the minimum, and the density is within the R12 density. The street frontages have been met. So B7D, all those requirements have been met. So in conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Lakeshore Estates LLC for preliminary plat approval as described in the application should be approved with 7 special conditions. I'm not going to read them, that they were presented here There are in our worksheet and in the staff report and the applicant indicated that they're acceptable to them, including the important traffic impact study.
I have a first by Commissioner Ingalls,
Second.
second by Commissioner Mandel. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Okay, item passes. Congratulations, best of luck. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Go ahead, Peter.
Well, yes, before the motion to adjourn, I did have a little comment. Sometimes we don't realize what we have until we see it taken away from somebody else. Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I want to thank you very much for letting the public speak, and in fact, encourage them to speak, for permitting debate on issues, for encouraging all of us to talk, to encourage the board members to argue amongst ourselves, discuss amongst ourselves, and reach some resolution, no matter what our position may be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that comment, but it's all of us that are on this commission that contribute to everything that you just said, but thank you, appreciate that. I would wish everyone a happy Halloween. I'll wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, since we won't be back here till December. With that, motion to adjourn by someone?
So moved?
I have a motion, a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn is approved.
Thank
I
you.
thought you were going to announce.